I'm Mark Kelly, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. You got your tank up and running, you've added some fish, you've gone through that initial cycle. Now what? Well, now you're on to the next 60 days. But before we get there, notice that there are no lights on the Mega Matrix and there's no power heads for intake flow. Why not? Because when you first start your saltwater tank, you don't have to have those things. And this is something that I see a lot of people get caught up on. They think they have to have all their gear before they get their tank started. Not true. The last thing I want to see is you waiting for years to be able to afford the lights that you really want or the pumps that you really want. You don't need those right away, so get your tank started. You can always add those things later. Now is a good time to add more fish. Slowly. Add a maximum of 2 fish every week. For the Mega Matrix 120, here's the stocking list for the first 60 days. A pair of clownfish go in first. A pair of Bengai cardinal fish are the second ones in the second week. Then an orchidati back. Then I'll pick some type of bristle-toothed tang and put it in with a yellow tang. Great Barrier Reef or blue chromis are going to go in too, depending on their availability. Sunburst / fathead anthias, ideally a pair of these. And then last but not least, a Midas blenny. Note that some fish are only available seasonally. Therefore, I may have to wait for some of these fish to be available before I can add them to the Mega Matrix 120. Of course, I recommend you quarantine any new addition to your tank. If you're not willing to quarantine, then I strongly recommend you purchase your fish from Live Aquarius Divers Den, as these fish have been pre-quarantined and preconditioned before they're offered for sale. Once the fish go in, the cleanup crew can go in as well. Make sure the fish go in the tank first, as without them, the cleanup crew has nothing to eat. Pro tip, remember only add the algae-eating members of the cleanup crew once you see algae in the tank. If you started your tank with live rock, then there's probably enough algae to sustain a light algae-eating cleanup crew. For the detrivores, they'll be happy picking over the live rock, so no concerns about adding them if you started your tank with live rock. Now if you started your tank with dry rock, you're going to want to wait a little bit before you add the algae-eating members of your cleanup crew. For the detrivores, they can go in when you add the fish. Speaking of algae, it's highly likely that your new saltwater tank will go through a diatom bloom. A diatom bloom is a burst of algae that happens in the first couple weeks after you cycle your saltwater tank. Uninformed saltwater tank hobbyists freak out when they see it, and here's the good news about a diatom outbreak. They come and they go. There's nothing you have to do about them. Simply go, hey look, a diatom bloom. Mark says this is no big deal. And then sit and wait. In a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, the diatom bloom will pass. This means that your tank is growing up, so smile, be happy, and then do nothing. Something else you're going to need to do in the first 60 days, and really for the rest of your tank's life, is top off your tank. See, water is going to evaporate out of your tank, and as water evaporates, the salt gets left behind. So if you don't top your tank off with fresh water, then the salinity, or how salty the water is in your tank, is going to continue to go up. Now, yes, you heard me right. You actually add fresh water to your saltwater tank when you come to top off the tank. If you added salt water, the salinity would keep going up, and eventually you're going to kill your fish and anything else that you have in your tank. Since the Mega Matrix 120 is a reef-ready tank and therefore has a sump, the water level will only vary in the return box chamber of the sump. That's this chamber right here. This is the lowest chamber in the sump, and the water level will only change here. If you're topping off manually, then you can pour the top-off water in the tank or the sump. The water will all end up in the sump, and the water level in the return box chamber will rise. Pro tip, topping off with RODI water is best. Ideally, you would have your own RODI system. Your local fish store likely sells RODI water, and if you can't get RODI water, then the chlorinated tap water will work. If you use tap water, make sure you dechlorinate it. Grab a bucket and then pour some in your tank. That's all you have to do. You're going to have to do this every couple days, and to make things easier on you, you can get an auto top-off system, which I'll talk about in a future episode. If you're a reefer, then you're going to want to add corals to your tank. But when is a good time to put corals in your tank? The answer is there's no right time to start putting corals in your tank. Your tank may be completely cycled, water parameters look great, and it still isn't ready for corals. Therefore, you have to do a little canary in the coal mining. Put some tester corals in and see what you get. I wait 2 weeks after the initial cycle, then put in some hardy tester corals like Duncans, zoanthids, or candy canes. Put these corals in your tank and see how they do. Note that if the coral is unhappy, then you might not see a change for days or weeks. So putting the coral in one day, then deciding the next day that the coast is clear and adding more coral simply isn't enough time. If the tester corals are happy after 1 week, then add some more. One piece of tank maintenance that you've been doing that I recommend you keep doing is testing your tank's water with test kits. Now, while testing is important, there's a second piece that's equally important, which is write down your results. Here's a hint. You're not going to remember them, so write them down. That can be on a piece of paper, it can be an app on your smartphone, whatever works for you. The point is, write it down, record it in some way so you can go back and reference it. Now, what do you want to reference it for? Well, one, you want to spot trends in your tank. You want to see as your nitrite rises, you're going to know that you're getting to the point where you're potentially overstocking your tank. And as you move into corals, you have to test different parameters. Then you can spot what makes your corals happy and what makes them unhappy. So run your tests and write down those results. I'm Mark Callahan, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. I'll catch you in the next episode.